Live on Alumni News for this week's edition of Alumni Talk. I'm Matt Hustler. I'm joined by Super Bowl champion Mike Tomczak. And Mike, we're getting towards the end of the season. The Bears had an interesting victory over Detroit on Sunday. Where do you see them at this season?
I think all the optimists are talking about them, being 8-9, right? Or 9-8. They still have a chance to go 9-8, correct?
Yep.
They have to
Currently
win
sit at
out.
5-8. Yep.
Yeah. And, they got a tough opponent this weekend. They're playing the Cleveland Browns on the road. But it seems like they play extremely well on the road as of late. For some reason, they just have something going, either some mojo or some false sense of security. So, maybe 7-10, maybe 8-9, maybe 9-8 is my guess right now.
Who knows? That could be good enough to get them into the playoffs, considering where the NFC's at. But you're straddling, you feet in both camps with the Bears and the Browns. The last time they played on the shores of Lake Erie, it was one of Justin Fields' first NFL appearances. And let's just say Cleveland did their job. Justin Fields got a rude awakening.
Well, that happens to rookies. You always remember your first date, your first kiss, your first hug, and, obviously your first start in the National Football League. And I certainly do. And Justin Fields no different. It was a rude awakening. He was trying to do the OH, celebration. I don't know if he ever got to that.
No, if anything, he was doing the OH while he was on the ground after taking a sack from Myles Garrett. That was a rough going for the Bears, but who knows? You never know what the system's going to look like. And like you said, the Bears are on a roll, but Cleveland, both teams are in interesting predicaments. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Oh, will be. I mean, this is one of those feast or famine games. Either it's going to be one of those tight games or some team's going to get blown out by turnovers or miscues, lack of execution. And, Cleveland's been beat up all year. I mean, from the start of the season, Deshaun Watson had a couple of games under his belt, and then all of a sudden Nick Chubb goes down. Then Conklin goes down. Then the other tackle goes down. Then another tackle goes down. And they've had their injuries, across the board. And I just hope it doesn't catch up to them. But it seems like a lot of teams that it's kind of that duration, who can outlive or out health, other teams in their division to get a chance in the playoffs.
Now, how do you see the banged up Cleveland O-line doing against a guy like Montez Sweat, who took the Lions to town last week?
He did take the Lions to town. Something incentivized him to get after the run game, the pass game. Very impressionable, right? He made his statement, is he a one-game wonder? Is he really starting to fit the system? Is this the system right for him? But individually, you look at his performance, he came to play, and it's up to the O-line, like you said, the Browns to kind of neutralize him. And it can't be done because the Browns have always, plug and play. And Bill Callahan should get a lot of credit for that, the O-line coach.
And before we turn back the clock, as of this moment right now, what do you do with the Bears staff after the season?
Well, that's a question you have to ask George McCaskey. He's going to have that question. They've talked about it. That franchise in the last 10 years has been upside down. It's been a revolving door. They've had turmoil this year with a couple of coaches being released, which was uncharacteristic, midway through the early part of the season. So I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, Matt. It would be a great deal for me to speculate, what they're going to do. And I know the radio stations in Chicagoland, you probably listen to them. They want him gone. They want him clean house. They want Harbaugh to come in and make a statement. But Harbaugh is getting ready to ink a pretty good deal here in the next day or two.
Oh, yeah. I think you and me both, given that you're a Buckeye, would not prefer Jim Harbaugh to take his talents back to the NFL. I think he's fine just where he's at. Up at Michigan. But turning back the clock, 38 years ago, the release of the Super Bowl Shuffle. You were the guitarist on that album. And my first question is, what was the process of that? Was that pre-planned? Did that get accelerated after you all lost to Miami?
It started, I would say, sometime in October. Willie Galt came up to an individual or collectively saying, hey, I got this thing that I'm kind of working on, and I'd like you guys to be a part of it. It's something to do with recording. like a recording of a song. And that was the early stages. And then as we started to ramp up, here we are, 8-0, 9-0, 10-0. He wanted some confirmation because the steam was building on the back end of this deal for people in LA that were going to come out and shoot this and choreograph it. And then it was right before Thanksgiving. He said, "Hey, I'm counting on you, T-Zach. I'm counting on you, McMahon. I'm counting on you, Walter, blah, blah, blah." So when that game ended, our flight back from Miami after our first defeat, Willie was right in your face. "Hey, I expect you there at 10 o'clock, Park West. Expect you there at 10 o'clock, Park West." And I lived downtown at the time, so it was easy for me to roll out about 9 o'clock after we got in, about 3 o'clock in the morning, to roll over to that Park West. And I was one of the early guys. And, they put out a nice spread for us. And that was the only choreographed part, showing up at 10 o'clock. So by the time everyone got there at 11 o'clock, we kind of start milling around everything. You guys are in the chorus, you guys are in the band. And I remember I picked up the saxophone, and Calvin Thomas, our fullback at the time, said, "Your lips aren't big enough to play that." And he grabbed it from me. And I started laughing. So I just grabbed the guitar because MTV was real prevalent then. And I just saw a lot of people playing the air guitar at the time. So it just kind of organically came together, for a good cause. And what a wonderful time it was. Incredible time.
And did you have any music experience prior to this?
No, I always loved the saxophone. That's why I grabbed it. I always liked that instrument. And, as soon as the director said grab an instrument, Stephon Humphreys jumped behind the drums right away. And Dennis Gentry was kind of the odd guy out, and he just started playing the bongo. So, like I said, Tyrone Keys was on the keyboards. And that was the exclusive of it, I believe. Oh, no, Dennis Gentry was on the bass. Dennis Gentry played the bass at the time. And yeah, we had a good time. Unfortunately for us, we weren't plugged in. So there was no loud, crazy music going on.
Any noodling prior to the recording? Like just messing around on the instruments?
No, because they were, when they're not plugged in, I mean,
Can't do much.
Those strings are pretty tight.
I think Calvin Thomas could have made some noise on the saxophone.
Oh yeah, he messed around with it. Stephon Humphreys and Reggie Phillips. I think Reggie Phillips was on the bongos. They were messing around trying to get that little sultry kind of jazz feel in there, but stick to football. They did a great job just, doing their job. They did their job as a prop.
Was there any concern of recording at that time? I read a little bit, and Walter Payton was a little hesitant on recording. There were a couple other guys that didn't want to jinx anything, considering you still had business to take care of.
Yeah, when you involve more than 5 people, there's going to be some controversy or some disagreements on things. I think there might have been a stipend paid to the guys that had direct roles that were out in front, like I'm the punky QB or I'm no dumb cookie, and ladies call me a Big O for my body and my mind, and those guys might have got some compensation for that. We were always told this was a charity thing. We weren't here because we were greedy. We're here to feed the needy. So that was the whole theme behind it, a charity-based thing. And maybe it came to fruition that, we helped a few families out, and we helped some people in the Chicagoland area during some tough times. But yeah, there was some discrepancy because the language in the contracts didn't read the same for everyone. And there was a commitment level. So you're dealing with human beings and have egos and didn't see the big picture. They thought somebody was kind of getting one over on another guy. Some guys were invited, some guys weren't. Some guys were left in, some guys were left out. But 38 years ago, man, that's pretty wild. Over 1 million copies.
And what's been the reaction like from that?
Very common when people run into me. Hey, I remember you from the Super Bowl Shuffle. Hey, yeah, you played for the Bears, right? Were you part of that Super Bowl team? I said, yes, and I was a lead guitarist in that video. He goes, yeah, you were. I remember watching that when I was 5 years old, and stuff. So I kind of aged myself, being 38 years ago. And I still remember that time rolling into the Park West, where I've seen many concerts, good concerts over the years.
And when you get there, you look at how the song is set up. You got everybody in the chorus and the hook. And then you got the verses. Each player had their own. They call me Sweetness, the Punky, amongst others. What's your favorite verse?
Oh, they call me Sweetness because I like to dance. Running the ball is like a true romance. You know,
You should have taken Walter's spot as the singer,
well, I do
as the
like
rapper.
music. Yeah, well, I'm not a rapper, but I do remember that because we went over and over and rehearsed it because the back chorus would do our jingle, even though Walter wasn't there and Jim McMahon wasn't there for the taping. They fused them in. We did the background chorus many times, and it was. I mean, it was a free flowing, organic get together that was a jam session without music. It really was.
So what was the production like? Given that they were infused later, what was that whole thing about?
It wasn't the B team. I'll tell you that. I mean, it was the real deal. These guys were, union guys, and they came in. They had tracks down so the camera can move from left to right and right to left, and they had all the microphones set in a certain way. And the director, who happened to be the lead choreographer, trying to get some of these dudes to dance the right way and everything, and don't look in the camera and just be yourselves and just play this role. He was on stage, at least a dozen times, kind of simulating what he was trying to get out of us. And sometimes, as professional football players, you need some direction, right? Especially when you're kind of out of the box. But some of these guys thought they could dance. Some of these guys thought they could sing. And it was just the choreography and the whole get together it just took one day. The post-production they had to worry about, but we were done. We were done after, 12 hours.
Who was the worst performer? Who took the most takes? Who's the worst dancer?
Gary Fensick, I think.
Really?
Surprisingly. Yeah, he was a little off rhythm and, kind of snapping a finger with the wrong hand and the body's going this way. And yeah, Steve Fuller. I mean, Steve, the guys were ragging on him. That country boy can't sing. He can't sway and everything. And I would say those two stood out. We were in the back. I mean, our role was just to make sure we knew the song and everything. And it was, they had cue cards, right? They had cue cards for each individual doing their jingle. But once it came through the loudspeakers with the drums, we are the Bear, shuffling crew, shuffling on down, doing it for you. You kind of felt that rhythm, that vibe, and that's when everyone came together.
What were the coaches' reactions? Buddy Ryan, Mike Ditka.
Yeah. Well, there was jealous guys to begin with, right? The guys that didn't get involved in the video, and they're saying it's wrong. We're in the season, but we had a lot of outliers. I mean, that team, for my rookie year, there were a lot of guys that were doing their own thing, radio shows, TV shows, and things of that nature. And this was a concoction that Willie thought we can come together. And how many teams tried to model that, right?
Well, you look at it.
Inception of that.
There are, I believe, 8 teams with the addition of last year's Eagles that made a mid-season musical number and made it to the Super Bowl. Starting with you guys.
Beautiful. And that following year, Mike Ditka came out with his own video, if you remember correctly. It was in his nightclub, and it was, if you could search that. You could search Ditka's his shuffle, the Ditka shuffle.
Which one do you think is better?
Oh, he didn't get. I mean, if he was lucky, he probably had to give away 1,000 of them when people were leaving the restaurant. But Matt, 1 million copies. You know how much 1 million is?
Too much to count.
Right? I mean, people actually went out and bought them. They actually purchased these the Super Bowl Shuffle, record.
Also was nominated for a Grammy in 1987.
Well, we probably lost. Who we lose to? U2?
Prince.
Prince, newcomer of the year.
Lost to Kiss by Prince.
Dang.
I mean, that's pretty high standards. You put Prince on a football field, especially against the 85 Bears defense. I think you were a lot closer in his art form than he would be in yours.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's one of he's one of the greatest performers, musicians, guitarists. I've seen things on him that pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. He's one of the top elite.
And then coincidentally formed the halftime show the next time the Bears were in the Super Bowl after 1985 in 2006 or 7, early 2007.
In the rain.
In the rain, in the loss to Peyton Manning, Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, and the Indianapolis Colts. Going off of Marvin Harrison, the Indianapolis Colts, the college football playoff system. You're an Ohio State Buckeye. Fell short to that team up north. Nine things back to Jim Harbaugh. What do you think of the Buckeye season?
Successful, except.
Yeah.
Beating Michigan. Successful, except. Great football game. Well played, heavy hitting. Turnover battle, won by Michigan. The explosive plays, won by Michigan. The third down conversions, won by Michigan. Rushing yards, won by Michigan. And that usually tells a story right there. If you didn't see the game and you gave me the stat sheet, I'd go to a third down conversion, rushing yards, and explosive plays. And then turnovers at the end, right? It would tell a story too. But, two great universities, just battling hard. And there's just so much ancillary pressure. You got to beat the team up north. Or their name is Michigan. And I'm not afraid to say it because I respect Michigan. Because I want them to win every game. So when we play them, I want their very best. And Ohio State got it this year. And they fell short. And sure, that's 3 in a row. But you know what? Harbaugh's teams before he got there lost a lot of games in a row. So it goes in cycles. And, one of my colleagues, Leroy Horde, just boasts, he's like a peacock walking around, or it comes every time we do a podcast. And, but I respect that team greatly.
And their star receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., in all likelihood, is going to be a top 2, top 3 pick in this year's draft. One of them is likely to be held by the Chicago Bears. Is MHJ trading his red for orange and blue?
Ooh, it's either NIL or NFL.
Yep.
And there's some big numbers going on right now from what I've heard, with my ear to the pavement. A lot of these guys that are 5th year and 6th year seniors can look at this money that they're getting as their first job, but it's not a reality job, right? Whether you're making $40,000 or $400,000 or $4 million, playing an amateur sport, that's not reality. Kids your age don't make that kind of money unless you're playing a professional sport, or unless you come out with a pretty, either your papa has dough or has a business, and you can morph into that. But incredible athlete, Marvin Harrison Jr. I've seen flashes of people that are better than him. I have seen flashes, and I think we all know what what it looks like. The dudes down at Florida State, the kid at Stanford had a stellar game against Colorado. You look at what they have in Washington. I mean, the University of Washington has a star receiver, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so comparably, arguably, the Bears are thinking, okay, if he does come out, we got to grab him. We got to grab him. But is he the best receiver in the draft? On paper, maybe. But, he's a big target. I mean, I wish him well. I'm a fan of his, and I can see the good things that he can do. But can he do them consistently throughout a 17-game season and beyond?
And I got 3 more questions for you. My first is, you mentioned tying this all together. You mentioned the chemistry and how it helped you guys gel as a team back in 1985, the Super Bowl Shuffle. The Bears right now are in an interesting position. I mentioned the record for teams that make a music album and go to the Super Bowl. It's happened 8 straight times. 3 and 5 is the record in Super Bowls, with the last loss being the Philadelphia Eagles of last year. Should Justin Fields, Deontay Foreman, Montez Sweat, should they go over to Park West? Would that help them?
No, I don't want this generation, the Dub Club, right? I think the
Oh
Bears
yeah.
are the herald at the Dub Club, and hopefully they can keep on lighting up that Dub Club, because that's what that franchise needs to do, is get back on that winning track, and settle the horses in the stable. You know, they're playing some good football. I mean, they played a good football game against Minnesota the week before. They played a great football game against Detroit. So something's happening in a positive way there, and we'll just see how it materializes. But as far as those guys, going to Park West, I think it's better off just staying in the Lake Forest area right now.
Leave the 85 Bears in the Super Bowl shuffle to be the franchise's song for years and years to come. Bears, Browns, this Sunday on Lake Erie. The Bears looking for their third win in a row. The Browns looking to stay on pace in a very competitive AFC North. Who's winning?
Oh, Browns. The Browns, they play very well at home. Their losses have come on the road. If it could have been a different story though, Matt, if you look at it, if the San Francisco kicker makes that field goal, the Browns don't get on that 5 out of 6 game winning streak or whatever, or 4 out of 6 game winning streak.